Hi, I'm Ruby Bolton. I am a board certified family law attorney, and I am here today to tell you about 10 things that you should do before you file that petition for divorce. The first thing that you should do is take a look at your relationship and ask yourself, is it possible that we can end this marriage without things becoming toxic? I have been involved in a lot of cases where maybe my client came in and they were willing to be amicable, and then the other side goes nuclear. They start emptying out the bank accounts and slinging mud, and suddenly it's an all-out war. If you can avoid an all-out war in your divorce, you want to. And so first determine, is this going to be a situation where you have to be at war with each other? And if there is a possibility that the two of you can work things out rationally with the help of attorneys or without, don't do anything that's going to drive it into that toxic zone. The second thing that you should do before you file for divorce is take steps to protect items that are of sentimental value to you. And you notice I'm not saying here, empty everything out of your bank account or change all the stock brokerage accounts. I'm talking about things like your mother's diary that she gave you before she died, or pictures that your children drew for you that you know that your spouse might react negatively to. Sometimes people faced with divorce take it out in unexpected ways. And if you've got something like, for instance, your Eagle Scout certificate that means a whole lot to you and isn't really monetarily worth anything, take a few minutes and protect that by getting it out of the house and take it to a secure location, particularly if it's not something your spouse is likely to miss and it's something that has a lot of value to you. The next thing that you should do before you file for divorce is to change your passwords. Even if you don't think that your spouse has your password, you would be surprised how often they do. And even if your spouse doesn't know your password, they probably know the security questions that will get them access to your password. For instance, if you've forgotten your password, what are you going to be asked? Maybe your mother's maiden name, maybe your favorite rock band. Your spouse probably has that information. So you want to change not just the passwords, but the security questions behind those to make sure that things that you think are private really are kept private. The next thing that you want to do before you file for divorce is to limit the liability that you have. And by this, I'm talking about debts. So we hear a lot about community property, and you'll even hear attorneys talking about community debt. But your debt is really between you and the creditors. If you have a credit card with Chase Bank, the Chase Bank doesn't care who incurred the debt on that card. They don't care what your divorce judge says as far as who should pay it. What they care about is that you signed a contract with them, and you are the one that they are going to be coming after for payment of that debt. So if you can take your spouse off a lot of these cards, if there's other authorizations, liability for Amazon, for toll roads, anything like that, if you can limit your liability, if there's a possibility that your spouse is going to become toxic, you want to do that. And you want to do that before divorce is filed, because a lot of courts, particularly Montgomery County all the time and Harris County right now while the courts are closed, have standing orders that are going to prevent you from taking your spouse off any credit accounts once that divorce is filed. The next thing that you're going to want to do before you file for divorce is to get copies of important financial documents. It's very useful if you can get copies of your spouse's 401k account, if you know at least what bank that things are in. If you can't get this without breaking into their account, don't do it. There are avenues open to us in the legal field. I can find this information out. But a lot of times, just a few minutes before the divorce is filed, where you copy down important information, maybe take pictures of a few things, can save us a month or more of issuing subpoenas, waiting for discovery to come back and forth just to get that information. So do what you can to get copies or take pictures of all your important financial documents now. The next thing that you need to do before you file for divorce is watch what you post on social media. And I mean any social media. You would be amazed at the things that people put on Facebook. And I think that you also might be surprised at how often Facebook and text messages are entered into evidence in the divorce court. It happens all the time. You cannot destroy evidence, so you cannot clean your Facebook, scrub it prior to a divorce because you know a divorce is coming. But if there's any possibility that you're looking at a divorce, you can be really careful about what you put up there to begin with. So just keep in mind anything that you commit to writing, whether it's in text message, whether it's a post to Pinterest, to LinkedIn, to Facebook, to Instagram, all of those things can end up in the divorce court. And in fact, you also want to be careful about what you say, because Texas is what is known as a one-party consent state. And that means that your spouse can legally tape record you without telling you about it. But be very careful if you plan to do that to your spouse. You better speak with an attorney first, because there are a lot of caveats that have to be followed to make sure that that recording's legal. There's a lot of times it's not in your best interest to make one. So the next thing that you need to do, be careful of what you put out there in any form. Another thing that you need to do before you file for divorce is stop a minute and think about where you want to be when the divorce is over. And here I'm particularly talking about the marital residence. Do you want to end up with possession of that marital residence when the divorce is over? If you do, you probably don't want to move out of it now. Now, I'm not telling you that you need to stay in the marital residence if it's dangerous. I'm not telling you that you need to stay in the marital residence if you're exposing your children to toxic fights between you and your spouse. But what I am saying is, if you want to end up with possession of that house at the end of the divorce, you have a leg up if you've been living in it the entire time. And the same thing goes with custody of the children. If you're going to want custody of the children when the divorce is over, you don't want to voluntarily walk out and leave them with your spouse now. This is an issue that can be really touchy, and you probably want to consult with an experienced family law attorney before making that decision. But a little thought now about what you want the divorce to look like when it's over can really help you get there. The next thing that you ought to do before you file for divorce, or while you're considering that, is document the role that you take in your children's lives. A lot of times, if there's going to be an issue over custody, if there's going to be an issue over how much visitation either party should have, what comes into evidence and what persuades the judge or the jury the most is hearing about how involved you were beforehand. And so if you can document the time that you spend, if you document whether you meet with teachers, whether you take the children to doctor and dentist appointments, whether you make them breakfast, who takes them school shopping, who helps them with their homework, that kind of evidence is going to be very useful to your attorney later on if custody or possession and access becomes disputed. The next thing that you can do to help prepare you before you file for divorce is to keep copies of documents that occur during the breakup of your marriage. And by this, I mean your spouse sent you a really horrible text. It might make you feel terrible to look at it, but don't delete it. We might need that. We might want that. We might need to show the court that there was a reason for you behaving the way you did. Keep the evidence that comes up that shows your spouse's bad behavior. If you, for instance, have run across a picture of, your spouse to his or her lover, and you're thinking, I don't ever want to see this again. You might not want to see it again, but your divorce lawyer probably would really like to see it. Take a picture of it. You want to preserve the evidence that you come across that can help you present your case in court. I hope you found the information in this video helpful. There are a lot of moving parts in any divorce, and it takes a lot of experience to help you line them up and to put you in the best position to negotiate or to try that final settlement. Schedule an appointment with one of the attorneys at the Bolton Law Firm, and we can help you get there.